stream. That's when I make a beeline for the tree line. That's when I make a beeline for the tree line.
Well, this is it, huh? This is the end. Yeah, I know. I'm wearing a Rugrats shirt and a SpongeBob review. Deal with it. It's close enough. This is it, guys. The big one, the crap stopper, the absolute abomination that I've been trying to hold off this entire month from reviewing. I know in episode order-wise, it is way earlier, at least according to the DVD listing, it's earlier. But there's no denying it. This is crap. I have been dreading talking about this. I was hoping I'd never have to talk about it. But since I'm currently on a quest to review every single SpongeBob episode known to mankind every June and September, there's no avoiding it. At least not any longer. But what I can do is at least talk about some other stuff before we get into the big event. So, what's up? What's happening? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Animation Station, your message of anything animation, including a sponge lives in a pineapple under the sea. As you can see, we are in full live action for today's review. Got the whole room and everything. And, yep, it's time for the big finale of SpongeBob Chapter 6, with the exception of one other thing, but that's going to come later. But this is the final episode review of the month, and this is the final, animation review of the month. I have been dreading talking about this, but there's no way around it. But the least I can do is at least talk about some of the things that came out around it. Now, not this, obviously. This is for another time, but some other stuff around it. Let's start at first with the documentary that came out about this, that I believe came out either right before or around the same time as this episode initially premiered, and that is Square Roots: The Story of SpongeBob SquarePants. This is a documentary that was exclusively on TV, has not been released on DVD yet, that details the history of SpongeBob in a small, digestible, bite-sized way, summarizing the main points and also what led to the show's creation. You got interviews with Stephen Hillenburg, you got the entire original voice cast, each getting a little segment about themselves. It's a really nice documentary, and it's really cool seeing how much SpongeBob has impacted all of these people, especially the late Ernest Borgnine, who actually got a neat little interview in here where he talks about how an old man came up to him and said that he's Mermaid Man. And then there's also one for the late Tim Conway as well, may they both rest in peace, of how he didn't realize until then that he was even on the show at all, which is kind of funny, to be honest with you. But it's funny, it's heartfelt, it's touching, and they even talk about some of the more adult aspects surrounding SpongeBob, like there's a debate about his sexuality, if he's gay or not. I don't know why that's thrown in there, but it's thrown in there. There's a whole segment about the whole stolen Burger King SpongeBob movie promo thing. That thing is incredibly well known and well detailed, so I won't go into too much detail, but yeah, that infamous little scandal. And then you just have overall just stuff about about the show's overall impact on the world and how it rose to become this big popular thing, to become an icon of animation history. Not to mention you have Avril freaking Lavigne singing the theme song in the opening intro. That's a way to pull me in. For those of you that don't know, I'm a huge Avril fan, so hearing that was really, really cool. So awesome that you guys included Avril, even though it's a shame she didn't get to use it in the actual SpongeBob movie that was initially planned for this, but at least it got released at all. So, Yeah, 9 out of 10 documentary, honestly. It's a really short but sweet, to the point, and very enjoyable little documentary, and it also has a little bit of sadness to it because, Hillenberg, Borgnine, Conway have all passed away at this point, so they've gone onward into the great beyond. So this is one of the last times that we actually got to see them on camera before they passed away. So that was a really nice thing to see. Obviously, Hillenberg lived a little bit longer until 2019 when he passed away. But point is, watching it now, it's definitely going to bring a tear to your eyes seeing these people talking about the show and their involvement and impact on the show. So yeah, it's a sweet little documentary. It's free on YouTube if you want to check it out. I'll put a link in the description or the pinned comment, whichever I feel like doing. And I highly recommend you check it out for yourself. It's a really sweet documentary, and while it may be outdated nowadays information-wise, because, we're on season 14 of this show now, it's still a really sweet documentary, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. It's a short watch. It's only about 40 minutes long, and like I said, it's free on YouTube, so you don't have to pay extra to see it. But definitely check it out. It is a very cool documentary that I try to watch at least once a year. Okay. That's the documentary. Now let's move on to the next part of this review, which is... Where did I put it? It's in here somewhere. Is it? Yes. Aha! Yes. The book. We got a little tie-in book by Scholastic, released around, I believe, 2009, maybe late 2010? When was this released? Doesn't say. Okay. And it pretty much details the special in a more digestible, bite-sized way, but you also have really cool little illustrations of all the characters that's actually unique from the actual stuff in the show. They don't just grab screenshots from the show and use them as background images. Instead, they actually hand drew all of this, and it looks really nice because of it. Not to mention, it's done in a nice bite-sized way. That way it's easy for kids to understand, and while it does detail pretty much everything that happens in the animated segment of this special, it's done in a way where it actually feels unique. It has a couple shots and a couple different pictures that weren't actually in the special. And while it does detail the special a little bit, it does find a way to do it in a different bite-sized way. It's a quick little read, but it's cute. It's a cute little read. I'm glad I have this book, and the illustrations are very nice to look at. Not to mention, it looks better than the crappy Flash animation they used in the actual episode. So, yeah, pretty cool. And you even get this really cool little shot at the very end here. That could easily be a wallpaper. It looks really nice. So, yeah. When do I get the book? Well, it's the same material as the 22-minute animated segment of this 40-minute TV movie, but it's honestly not bad. It's a solid enough retelling with some nice illustrations, and it's in a way that's easy enough for kids to read. So, you know what? 7 out of 10 book. It's okay. It's solid. It's pretty good. I think if you're a SpongeBob collector, that's a really nice book to have. It's short, it's sweet and to the point, but it cuts out most of the crap filler from the actual special. Alright, one last thing to talk about, and then we'll get to numero uno. Where did I put it? One last thing. Here it is. Yes. Of course, we can't talk about Truth or Square without the fact that it got released by itself as a DVD. This one right here. Mine's not in the best of condition. As you can see, the spine's kind of falling off. I had to tape it there to keep it in place. But I will say, as much as I hate the special itself, I do like the design of this art. You have SpongeBob with a Krabby Patty in the mouth, and in between the buns it says Truth or Square. It has a nice outline to it. The art is still really nice. It's just a shame that the content itself is not very good. Now, this includes less episodes than your normal standard SpongeBob DVD, because for those of you that don't know, most of these SpongeBob DVDs have about 7 episodes each. Maybe cut it down a little bit to maybe 6 or 5 if it's a special. But since this is a TV movie, you only get 4 extra episodes on top of the actual special itself. You get Porous Pockets, which is an okay episode. You get Choir Boys, which we know is garbage. You get Krusty Crushers, which very great underrated wrestling episode. And of course the abysmal trash fire of the card. But you also get some really nice little special features. Yeah, this is before Nickelodeon started getting super lazy with their DVD releases. You get behind the scenes of the opening, you get some karaoke music videos, and that's about it. It's still kind of lazy, but it's still cool, and it's a nice little thing to add to the collection. And as for the disc itself, was this one they started using? Yes. So, for those of you that don't know, Nickelodeon got lazier and lazier with most of these standard DVD releases, and they went from having really nice illustrations on their DVDs to just being the flat, boring silver. I don't know why they do this. Maybe it's a cost-cutting measure. I don't know. But, yeah, that is annoying. Especially when you look back at some of the other SpongeBob DVDs and you see, like, this really nice artwork even on the disc. So, I don't know. Nickelodeon just got lazy. It is what it is. So, why do I have this? Even if I hate the special? Well, like I said, I like the art. It was only like $1 or $2 at my local Goodwill, and I'm trying to collect at least one of every single SpongeBob DVD known to man. Not like the compilations and everything. I mean like just these single individual releases. So, yeah, completionism, and again, I just really like the art, and it does look nice in the collection with the rest of them. So, that's why I have this, and that's why I think the DVD is actually more interesting than the actual special. Okay. So, we've talked about the documentary, we've talked about the book, we talked about the DVD. I can't put it off any longer. Let's talk about the special. And yes, this is going to be a full spoiler review because I don't want to hold back any of my rage on this one, because to say I hate this special is an understatement. This is arguably one of, if not the absolute worst episode in the entire show. Yes, really, it is that terrible and that bad. Now, does it have things like Squidward torture? No. Does it have distasteful jokes about suicide? No. Does it have Krusty Krabs being cheap? Kind of, but it's not as egregious as it is usually. Like, it's weird because this special's problem is not that it has like all the things that make mid-season SpongeBob so unbearable at times. Now, this special's problem is the fact that it is just full of such tedious, misleading, crappy, trailer-made filler. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to go through the entire summary of the overall story to try and give you a good idea of why this sucks so hard. So, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to read the entire synopsis, talk about the parts that personally angered me and that made absolutely no sense, and then finish it off with my own written review that I put on my Facebook and my Instagram. So, let's dive into why this special sucks so bad. So, first up we have the first act. Patchy the pirate is holding a TV extravaganza and is waiting for SpongeBob to show up to it, but with no reply, he thinks back to all the times that has passed without SpongeBob giving him a reply. I should also reference the fact that before we even got to that, there was opening narration by Ricky Gervais, with a clip show of patchy segments from older episodes. It's kind of pointless, and the narration itself does literally nothing. He then sets out to find SpongeBob and rides his boat to Bikini Atoll. In other words, he goes to Nickelodeon Animation Studios. And while this is a bit nostalgic to look back on now, considering how much it's changed in the past decade, it's still kind of boring and flat, because you just have Patchy talking to someone over the intercom, getting let in by the security guard, given a shrimp cocktail, and then we finally get to the animated part of the episode. Well, the first of a couple animated parts of the episode. So, let's go through it together, shall we? The animated section of the episode then begins with SpongeBob waking up in the morning with the help of 1,000,000 alarm clocks lined up to the foghorn, only to blow out even more clocks, thus waking SpongeBob up. This is useless filler that does absolutely nothing. SpongeBob has never had to use a million alarm clocks just to wake himself up. I mean, usually his foghorn clock is more than enough. He then reveals that it is the 117th anniversary of the Krusty Krab. I'm not saying the actual name because it's too stupid for words. He then remembered the first time he ate a Krabby Patty and he apparently loved it, even though he had not been born yet. Yeah, this part is specifically made for people with a fetish. And no, I'm not being harsh here, I'm being honest. There is a scene in this special at the very beginning where we see Mrs. SquarePants pregnant with SpongeBob. And we have the even more gruesome, disgusting little detail of when she's eating Krabby Patties, SpongeBob tears out his umbilical cord and starts eating them directly through his mouth. Gross. That is just gross. Just freaking gross. He prepared himself getting ready in various wacky ways, more filler. While we see SpongeBob getting ready process, the song A Day Like This can be heard. It's a decent song. It's not great, but it's okay, and it's one of the better parts of this movie. But it's stolen from the actual SpongeBob movie because this is one of those songs that, just like Best Day Ever, played in the end credits of the movie. Showing how little effort they put into this 10th anniversary special. After he finishes getting ready, SpongeBob rushes all the way to the Krusty Krab when he bumps into the customers waiting in line to get into the restaurant. And he knows he can't be late, so he jumps over the crowd's heads. AKA, he hops on top of their heads instead of just, walking the frick around or digging a hole to make some kind of secret entrance. Maybe like in reference to Chum Caverns or something. I don't know, just something. You don't have to hop on people's heads, SpongeBob. There's literally a million ways out of this. You're working with cartoon logic. You can do literally anything. But you went the laziest route possible to save money on animation. Ugh. As the act ends, SpongeBob arrives at the Krusty Krab where Mr. Krabs reminds them to keep a close eye on all the doors and entrances, including the air vents, to make sure that Plankton does not sneak in during the 117th anniversary celebration. Meanwhile, at the Chum Bucket, Plankton spoke with his computer wife Karen about how he is a failure for 50 years of business, while Mr. Krabs has been nothing but successful. In order to redeem himself and finally get his hands on the Krabby Patty's secret formula, because he feels like today is the best day, like every other day in this show, Plankton decides that he'll sneak into the Krusty Krab while the employees and Mr. Krabs are distracted by the festivities and steal the formula. Oh, and not to mention we have a new animation of more filler, this time made out of sports jokes of Mr. Krabs constantly kicking and slapping Plankton in order to make him become a splat against his own Chum Bucket wall. It's new animation that adds literally nothing. Now we get to Act 2. Back at the live action segment, the worst part of the entire episode, believe it or not, and yes, I know that is saying a lot considering how bad the animated segment of this episode is. Mr. Krabs decided to put SpongeBob in charge of decorating the Krusty Krab. Squidward reminds Mr. Krabs what had happened the other time SpongeBob got to decorate, which then cuts to a flashback of SpongeBob's former decorating failure. In other words, more new animation of stuff that didn't even need to be there and just waste more time. But this time he was going to use the resources that he already had in the restaurant, including napkins, ketchup, mustard, and inflatable Krabby Patties as balloons. I do like the inflatable Krabby Patty balloons, those are a cute touch. Meanwhile, Patrick has been hired by Mr. Krabs' security, which I think is a terrible decision because, you just had him in your restaurant and Pat no pay, and for some reason, after that atrocious episode, you want him back in your restaurant again. Oh, and not to mention the episode, freaking, No Hat for Pat, when he literally caused you to go bankrupt. Yeah, you make a lot of sense, Krabs. Yep. Then they go to the freezer to see the ice sculpture that SpongeBob made for the Krabby Patty. Upon entering the freezer, the door accidentally gets locked behind them, thus trapping them inside. And for some reason, apparently in Spain and Latin America, Stuck in the Freezer is the actual name of this episode, which is a far more fitting title than Truth or Square. The four of them decide to bust into the air ducts in an effort to escape. Now, keep in mind, right before this entire thing happened, Mr. Krabs showed a network of tunnels on a hologram that lead under the Krusty Krab. But for whatever stupid reason, this entire maze is actually on top of the damn restaurant. That makes zero sense. While in the air ducts, Mr. Krabs finds a wrapper from an older Krabby Patty. Mr. Krabs then has a flashback of an old black and white Krusty Krab commercial. In other words, Adobe Flash, because Nickelodeon's too lazy to let the animators actually use the old school animation of that time period. Oh, not to mention, it's a parody of a cigarette commercial. That's not funny, that's just horrible. SpongeBob and the gang then go into the Krusty Krab surveillance room. Okay, let's talk about this friggin' thing. So, apparently, Mr. Krabs has installed secret cameras in everybody's room, which costs a ton of money, in a room that's not easy to get in or out of, just to keep watch of everybody and make sure that his employees arrive on time. And for some reason, he also has one in Sandy's bathroom. Ew. Like, what's the joke? What's the point? Why is this even here? And it's not even brought up again. More wasting time with new animation crap that doesn't need to be there. On many monitors, they see that SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward's houses are on camera. Mr. Krabs acts as though he doesn't know why there are hidden cameras, although it is heavily referred that he is responsible for them. Oh, and not to mention the fact that he refuses to use money to hire actual security guards for the Krusty Krab, but he'll install all these incredibly expensive cameras. Plot hole, makes no sense, and is entirely out of character. At that very moment, it's revealed that there are two men recording them from behind as they appear on one of the monitors. Mr. Krabs then suggests that they split up to find a way out. In other words, they bring up the map from earlier just to ignore it. What's the point of even having a map to the area that you're crawling around in if you're too damn stupid to actually use the thing? You know, because terrible writing demands it. I guess. I don't know what other explanation there is for this stupid thing. Ultimately, they end up together again a few minutes later because Krabs teleports through a flashback. This has got to be the moment where the writers just gave up. Meanwhile, Plankton has reached the Krusty Krab and was searching through the air ducts to find a way to the formula, but he was having no such luck. Plankton eventually falls right into the air duct where the gang is, and that's the end of the second act. Act 3 starts off back on the surface, where Patchy sails through the sewers and onto the ocean. After sailing for a while, he almost makes it to Bikini Bottom, but is stopped short and eaten by a whale. Okay, I should maybe talk about the Patchy segments for a little bit, because apparently they're keeping it out of the summary. Which I get why, but it's still a part of the episode. So, you have Patchy using a Rolodex while all of this is happening to call up a bunch of random celebrities to get pointless celebrity cameos that were promised to be in the special because of the trailers and marketing. And they are some of the most pointless, shameless, and dull freaking celebrity cameos that I have ever seen. You get LeBron James, who proves even back then he couldn't act for crap. You get Tina Fey. You get friggin' what's some of the other ones? I'm trying to remember them all. There's so many pointless celebrity cameos in this freaking thing. You get Will Ferrell, which apparently is being stalked by SpongeBob producers on his morning jog. Thank you, Pie Guy Rules and Mysterious Mr. Enter for that joke. And it just goes on and on and on. And not to mention, this Rolodex is a pickup shot. They go back and film it later because the hand that's flipping through this Rolodex, which they loop several times of this same freaking shot of him rolling through the same freaking Rolodex of the same freaking names over and over, is not even Tom Kenny's hand. That's someone other than him. Because it's way too feminine to be his. God, they don't know how to shoot anything live action, nor do they apparently know how to tell a story through animation, apparently. Just freaking... Oh, Nickelodeon. Ugh. But yeah, then he's eaten by a whale after SpongeBob doesn't show up at his extravaganza, where he actually manages to get one celebrity, Pink, But then you have a bunch of other celebrities. Well, celebrities, I should say. They're in-universe characters. Such as the guy on the penny, because apparently the writers don't know who Abe Lincoln is. As well as Foul Clocks, some random guy in a chicken suit, and the 5th best ventriloquist in the world, which apparently sucks because he can't even close his freaking mouth. Okay. And then after that, he's eaten by a whale, and we go back to SpongeBob. Back with the gang, SpongeBob remembers the time that Mr. Krabs first told him about the formula. Plankton leans in an attempt to find out where the formula is, but Mr. Krabs in the flashback grabs Plankton and throws him in the air duct. And that's how he just randomly appears next to them again, despite being lost forever after going the wrong way in the air ducts because he's too stupid to use the map that he himself told the others to freaking remember. The stupidity and laziness in this special is staggering. Oh, and not to mention, we don't actually get to see him talk about the Krabby Patty formula. You know why? Because the whole damn thing was a lie. It was one of the most infamous lies in the commercial that was used in the commercials and promotion of this absolute bomb wreckage to turn this into yet another Nickelodeon overrated SpongeBob ratings trap. Like, they literally put this in here just so they could hype the special. Like, we're finally gonna figure out what the Krabby Patty formula is. Ha! Gotcha! It's more filler that leads to nothing! Great choice, Nickelodeon. Great choice. Whatever. After moving further through the air ducts, Squidward remembers the days before SpongeBob lived in Bikini Bottom. But SpongeBob interrupts him to remind him how great it was when he first moved in. In other words, it's 2 back-to-back flashbacks that once again lead to absolutely freaking nothing. We get Squidward talking about how apparently it was all happy and joyful before SpongeBob came into Bikini Bottom, even though he still lives next to Patrick. He still has to work in the Krusty Krab, working with someone who clearly isn't Jim, because apparently the writers... Look, I know that I say over and over that this show has no continuous continuity, but damn it, this would be a nice way to get a cameo in of an actual character from a previous episode. You know, actually freaking make it feel like a celebratory anniversary special instead of just more timeless, boring filler that is boring, monotonous, plot hole filled, and pointless. Is it really that hard? Can you not just do your freaking job? Let's just keep going. Oh, this freaking thing pisses me off so much. And SpongeBob interrupts him to remind them, yep, okay, I already talked about this, but I'll talk about the flashback that actually happens into this. And I'll give it this, it's the best flashback in the movie. And it's because we actually get to see SpongeBob going through a bunch of different houses, and they actually use a legacy character. In the one and only freaking time they use a legacy character in all these damn flashbacks. And that is, we get to see the home estate agent from Opposite Day. Yes, that the same fish, same voice actress, same character. The one and only time it actually feels celebratory. Is it still a waste of time and pointless filler? Sure, but at least it felt like it actually had a purpose. To some extent. Mr. Krabs' wallet then begins going crazy over all the loose change he isn't earning from the customers waiting in line outside, so Mr. Krabs throws his wallet down the vent to go and get it, only to be picked up by an unsuspecting man who steals the wallet from Mr. Krabs, the one and only funny joke in the episode. Patrick then pulls out a radio transmitter he had taken from Sandy, which he said he borrowed. I know this is before yours, mine, and mine, but we know what this is, right? He stole that freaking walkie-talkie. They then attempt to call Sandy and have her come rescue them, but Patrick, being stupid mid-season annoying Patrick, destroys the transmitter, thinking that Sandy's trapped inside of it. You are made stupid. As SpongeBob then remembers the time that he and Sandy got married through a flashback. This is the most absolute freaking abysmal, infamous lie in the entire commercial. Because people actually ship this couple, and doing this whole scene pretty much just gave this scene to the internet to do whatever they wanted with it. Not to mention, it was hyped up that this was actually going to be a big thing. Not to mention, on top of that, when it even is revealed that it is a play, the preacher actually doesn't know that it's a play, meaning that he unlawfully and unknowingly actually said the actual vows, because he was not in on the actual part of this being a play. So, in other words, if you actually take continuity into account here, SpongeBob and Sandy are actually married. Make of that what you will. And that's when we get to the fourth act of the episode, which opens up by showing Patchy now stuck in the belly of the whale, and I guess an homage to Pinocchio, but it doesn't really go anywhere, where he plays some supposed scenes of SpongeBob before it first aired, which instead, no, it's just more bad acting and terrible effects. I don't blame Tom Kenny, I'm sure he was doing what the director told him to do, but apparently the director didn't know what the absolute fuck he was doing. Including Squidward, Patrick, and Mr. Krabs' versions of the theme song. It was decently funny the first time when Squidward gets his pants removed. Don't take that the wrong way, it's actually kind of funny when it's actually in the episode. But then Patrick's isn't funny, and Mr. Krabs just makes me revile with horror what the Eugene Krabs show would be like. Once again, thank you to the mysterious Mr. Enter for that joke. His camera suddenly goes haywire, which results in the whale sneezing him out, and launching him right back into the studio. He's knocked unconscious and starts dreaming that he is in Bikini Bottom by SpongeBob's Pineapple, where he meets the sponge himself. In other words, this is the entire climax of Patchy's involvement in this episode. It's more bad effects, it leads to nothing, it's treated like nothing, and it just cuts back to the studio not even 5 seconds later. So, in a way, this is the climax of the damn special. Just a little clip of Patchy in terrible green screen, knocking on SpongeBob's door, seeing SpongeBob in all his animated glory, and then fainting and going right back. That's the climax of the special. Congratulations! How long did it take you to think of that one? Because it clearly wasn't very long. God, this special is so fucking lazy! Ugh! He was then knocked out again, this time in his dream, because he faints after seeing SpongeBob. He then wakes up to see the celebrities in the studio who tell him that he can see SpongeBob everywhere, and they proceed to knock him unconscious again. And in a rather fascinated way, according to it leads to nothing. It's just another joke about the guy on the penny. Did anyone try here? Anyone at all? Whatever, we're almost done, let's just finish. Returning to the gang at this point, SpongeBob has decided to use all of the gang as a battering ram to break through the air duct. Which, in other words, making all the entire ventilation crap we spent the entire 22 minutes of this damn animated version of this 42-minute TV movie pointless! After several tries, the gang busts through only to discover that all the customers were too freaking boring and done from waiting for the plot to start and have gone home due to them waiting too long to get any food. Mr. Krabs then becomes heartbroken and believes that the anniversary has been ruined, leading Squidward to reaffirm to the audience that this was all for absolutely nothing. Whatever, well, let's just finish. SpongeBob then begins to sing the Krusty Krab song, "Oh Krusty Krab." In other words, he does a Christmas carol. Why? What does this have to do with the episode? How does this bring people back? And why? Why? My brain is broken by this. Let's just finish. Fuck this episode so hard, dude. Which brings all the customers back as they form a circle and start singing with SpongeBob. The Krusty Krab then returns to business and the celebration is actually ready to begin. In other words, you get the actual celebration part of the episode only at the final 10 minutes. In other words, this episode had no plot whatsoever. Mr. Krabs also goes on about the customer who had taken his wallet. Meanwhile, Plankton, on the other hand, is discovered by Krabs despite being in the freaking Krusty Krab for literally hours. He could have clearly stolen the Krabby Patty formula by now, but no, the plot holes and terrible writing demands that it's back to the status quo once again. He's blown to a balloon by Krabs after he pleads with him not to launch him. So then he turns him into a balloon and makes him float out the window. Krabs then holds the door open for a customer who turns out to be the same one who took his wallet. He then chases after the person, realizing it. SpongeBob wishes the restaurant a happy 117th anniversary, and the special finally ends with one final friggin' narration from Ricky Gervais, and that's it. That is your 10th anniversary special. What a load of barnacle shit. Like, it's lazy, it's tedious, it's pointless, it's bland, it's monotonous, it's full of plot holes. It was nothing but lies that were used just specifically to hype it up for literally no other reason than to hype it up. And apparently everything that was tying into it was better than the actual damn thing it was promoting. God, I forgot how bad this thing was until I finally saw it again. And my lord, it is so bad. It is one of the worst episodes of this entire show. Bar none. Is it the worst special of the entire show? Who knows? You can honestly make this a toss-up between this and Clash of Triton. They both suck just as hard as the other. They're both waste of time. They're both showings of how this show went on for too damn long, and how literally no one tried at all to make this even feel like a 10th anniversary special. It's just Nickelodeon being as cheap as possible, making a rating strap for literally no other reason than because it was SpongeBob's 10th anniversary. And outside of a few little mentions of it here and there from Ricky Gervais in that pointless animation, well, not pointless animation, in the pointless freaking narration, it doesn't acknowledge it. It doesn't feel like a special. It shouldn't have been a special. And making it a TV movie with all this live action junk mixed in on top of this terrible 22-minute animation, it just makes it worse in retrospect. Let's just get to my final thoughts, dude. I'm done. I'm so fucking done. There's a lot to say about this insipid, lazy, dull, tedious, half-assed excuse of a TV movie, but pretty much everyone has already said ad nauseum, so instead I'll just sum up the main points. The writing's garbage, the pacing's beyond excruciating, the plot is terrible, the jokes are weak, the characters are mid-season stupid in the most frustrating ways imaginable, the animation's wildly inconsistent, the amount of filler is obnoxious, the ending is rushed, everything the commercials teased was a great big lie that led to nothing. Plankton's here for no reason other than because it had to be a Krusty Krab episode. The runtime's way too long, the voice acting sounds off, there's nothing celebratory about this special at all, the narration from Ricky Gervais adds nothing, rewatch value is entirely non-existent, the plot holes are far too numerous and blatant, the amount of flashbacks are obscene, and the whole thing is a total waste of everyone's time, attention, and money. Oh, and the amount put on celebrity cameos was headache-inducing. But I'll give it this. There are some good things in this special, buried under all this 44 freaking minutes of absolute abomination garbage. The pink song is great. We Got Scurvy, easily the best part of the entire movie. CeeLo Green's version of the theme song is actually pretty good. I mean, it's CeeLo Green. That's to be expected. And the stop-motion version of the intro that plays at the very beginning, minus the creepy pirate puppet that didn't need to be there, is fantastic. Heck, it'd even be reused for Season 11's Halloween special, Legend of Bikini Bottom. But overall, it's ultimately barely worth acknowledging in this long-winded, cheap, and all-around terrible excuse of a special. And as a 10th anniversary celebration of the franchise, it is a gigantic slap in the face. Thankfully, they would do much better for SpongeBob's 20th anniversary, which we'll talk about when we get to Big Birthday Blowout, which that special is phenomenal. I'm excited to talk about that one in a few years. But this still has inevitably gone down in history as the worst of the SpongeBob ratings traps, and one of the worst episodes in the entire series, period. And poor Robin Williams, man. He deserved much more respect and dignity than this absolute it show. Yeah, Robin Williams, I feel so bad for him. This was his contribution to the SpongeBob series before he passed away a few years later. He deserved a lot more dignity than that, dude. He deserved much more dignity. The game and book are leagues better. Literally everything that was tying into the special is better than the actual special. That shows you how little effort was put into this absolute dumpster fire. And if we're counting this as a movie, it is by far the worst SpongeBob movie. Like, not even a freaking contest. Like, say what you want about Saving Bikini Bottom, and say what you want about Sponge Out of Water. At least they actually fucking tried. This was just 44 minutes of plain, bland, boring, pointless filler with terrible live action segments mixed into an all-around awful episode of the show that only perfectly exemplified why people hated this show in this time period. It may not be from the worst season of the show, but it is still possibly the worst special of the entire series. Say what you want about Land Square Panis, at least it had a plot. Say what you want about Clash of Triton, at least it had some decent value in the beginning and it had good ideas. This just had a whole bunch of absolutely nothing. I know I said how shell-shocked in the previous review was 11 minutes of nothing. Well, how would you like to watch 44 minutes of nothing? Oh, not to mention it extends to an hour of nothing if you include the television airings that include a bunch of freaking ads on top of it. I'm done. I'm so done. And look, I love this show. You guys should know by now, by all my previous reviews, that I love this show. And that's never gonna change. But, oh my holy fucking fuck. This special just reminded me of why SpongeBob was so despised and so hated until his revival in Season 9. This special is terrible in every single way, shape, and form. And if for whatever reason you have not seen it yet, avoid it. Avoid it like the plague. Even for kids, it is not worth their time. Just watch the original SpongeBob movie again. It's the same length and a million times better in every single capacity. Hell, watch the rehydrated fan-made version of the movie. That's even shorter, that's closer to the runtime of this specific trash pile, and it has way more effort put into it, with so much different animation styles, so much creativity, and so much interesting and unique visual appeal by so many talented artists and designers who are also fans of the show. This was made just for corporate fuckery. This was made plain simply for corporate fuckery. And it is one of Nickelodeon's worst things ever. So now that I've ranted and rambled for about 40 minutes, why don't we go ahead and get to the final verdict, so that way we can throw this back into the annals of history where it never has to be brought up ever again. The final verdict for Truth or Square, this absolute sorry-ass excuse of a 10th anniversary special, is a 1 out of 10. A 1. The small little positives are scars and barely worth mentioning over all this absolute half-assed, tedious, lazy, cheap, budget-cut-full, pothole-filled garbage. If you like it, I respect your opinion, but I personally recommend that you just bury this damn thing as fast as possible and never touch it again. And with that, I never have to talk about this special ever again. Thank goodness. That's one more terrible SpongeBob episode that I never have to bring up, talk about, or mention ever again. I can breathe a sigh of relief because now my sanity has been saved. So thank you guys so much for watching this super long review. I know that this took a while to get done, but I had to take a few days to prepare myself for this absolute conglomerate. And I only hope that this can serve as a great ender for Chapter 6 of SpongeBob Month. Which is what I would say if it weren't for the fact that we have one last thing. Since we are talking about Truth or Square, and I actually didn't talk about this with a Land Square Panis because I don't currently own a version of that. Well, there's one other tie-in thing that we gotta talk about when discussing Truth or Square. And thankfully, like I said, it is leagues better than the actual thing it's promoting. And it also has some interesting development history, and it's all around a much more pleasant experience. And it has been a while since I've done a video game review, so why not do another one again? So, join me next time for the true finale of SpongeBob on Chapter 6, when we look at the final game by Heavy Iron Studios and the SpongeBob SquarePants franchise, the tie-in video game for Truth or Square for Xbox 360. So, this is coming up next. It's probably going to take until tonight to actually release because it's going to take a lot of editing to get done. But I can only hope that I can find a way to end this on a much more positive note than this absolute crap pile. So, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next review. Take care, guys.
And I will soon forget. So listen and you won't regret. Be true to yourself, don't miss your chance, and you won't end up like the fool who ran.